Hello, my loves, and welcome back to another kick-ass episode of the Disgustingly Easy podcast. I'm your host, Bec Cameron, founder of The Long Game. And look, in an ideal world, we would eat when we're hungry and we'd stop when we're full, right? We'd trust our bodies without second guessing, second counting, or outsourcing our decisions to an app. And if that's genuinely been your experience, I want you to know that I'm thrilled for you. But most of us are not operating inside an ideal world. And today we're going to talk about tracking calories and macros and the idea of eating intuitively, because inside The Long Game or just inside my DMs are a world of women who tell me time and time again, I feel like I should be able to eat intuitively. I feel like I shouldn't have to track, or that they should know how to make good choices when it comes to their food, their nutrition, to fat loss, to muscle building. And I want to set the record straight once and for all. Is tracking good or bad? Is it helpful or is it triggering? Should you know better or should you be able to eat intuitivally? So as many of you know, I had a really destructive relationship with food when I was younger. I spent a lot of time in my 20s using apps like MyFitnessPal to count how little calories I could eat. And I could regale you with the exact numbers if I wasn't conscious of the fact that some of you might take that as inspiration. I let this practice go as I matured, as I healed, and as I began to see and source my worth from inside myself, irrespective of my appearance, and my body size and my weight have fluctuated in both directions since. Coming back to tracking postpartum was initially something that I was afraid of. However, with time, with patience, with support, I was able to neutralize those numbers. And this was a tool that supported me to lose 30 kilos over 2 years through routine, cut, and maintenance phases. And now I've just completed my first bulk phase, which, if you don't understand the language, a deficit or a cut is when we eat below what's required for our body to maintain its current composition. We do this in order to lose body fat. Maintenance is where we eat enough to stay exactly as we are. And it's really, really important to understand because, in my opinion, we should spend the majority of our time in maintenance to protect our hormone health, our mental health, and allow for life to life. A bulk is when we are intentionally eating over our maintenance in order to support rapid muscle growth and development. Now, tracking has a purpose within all of these frameworks, and my perspective on these tools is that they are simply that. They are tools, and they are neither good nor bad. They are helpful to the degree that we utilize them, and they are unhelpful when we haven't done the work on ourselves in order to use them in the way that they are intended. Now, when it comes to whether or not you should or shouldn't need them, here's my take, and let me just tell you in advance, fucking strap in. We are living in a world where marketing and advertising are not neutral. They are not accidental. They are designed to manipulate behavior. We live in a food environment where products are engineered to be hyper palatable, high in sugar, high in fat, high in salt, packed with additives, not because that's what our body needs, but because it overrides satiety signals and keeps consumption high. And this manipulation doesn't stop at junk food. It shows up dressed as health. Fast food menu items stamped with the Heart Smart tick, ultra processed products positioned as better choices because they're low in calorie, things like diet drinks sold as the responsible, disciplined choice, while quietly ignoring the cumulative impact of artificial sweeteners and hormone-disrupting additives. Capitalism doesn't reward nourishment. It rewards scale, speed, and repeat consumption. So we are taught to focus on numbers that are easy to sell, calories, macros, labels, ticks, while the deeper physiological impacts disappear from the conversation. Health education becomes simplified, branded, and commercially convenient. Complex biology has been flattened into slogans. Everything has been siloed into its own little segment. Nuance gets stripped out because it doesn't convert. And then individuals are told to carry the blame, to know better, to make the right choices, to regulate inside of an environment designed to erode that regulation. How are you supposed to know what's healthy when the information itself has been shaped by a system that benefits from the confusion and the constant consumption? This isn't a personal failure. It's the reality of navigating your body, your health, and your nutrition inside a capitalist food system. More often than not, we're not actually experiencing issues pertaining to willpower. We are being co-opted by an industry doing exactly what it was built to do. Now, let's layer into that neurodivergence, because this is where the conversation usually collapses into moralizing, black and white rules, or oversimplification. Many neurodivergent women do not experience hunger and fullness cues in a clear, linear, reliable way. interoception, which is how you feel the senses that are occurring within your body, can be muted, delayed, inconsistent. Hunger doesn't always show up as I'm hungry. It might show up as irritability, exhaustion, dizziness, shutdown, anxiety. Add in chronic overwhelm, burnout, sensory overload. Layered into this is how neurodivergent brains often relate to food and the rules around food, black and white thinking, all or nothing patterns. And if you're eating, you eat everything. If there's food on the plate, it gets finished. Not because you're greedy, not because you're out of control, but because completion feels regulating. Because stopping midway feels ambiguous, uncomfortable, or unfinished. For some women, fullness cues get overridden, not by a craving, but by a nervous system that just wants certainty. Now, add in a history of restriction, of years being praised for pushing through, for ignoring your body, for being disciplined. For a lot of women, hunger cues aren't lost, they are trained out of you. Then when we add executive function challenges, decision fatigue, difficulty initiating meals in the transition, difficulty planning, sequencing, remembering, meals get skipped not because you're good or you're controlled, but because your brain is already at capacity. And then we add in life, motherhood, running a business, being responsible for everyone and everything. Hyperfocus kicks in and you look up 6 hours later having eaten nothing. Not because you were trying to restrict, but because your nervous system locked onto the task in front of you. And sitting underneath all of that is diet culture. Decades of messaging that taught us ignoring hunger is discipline. Control is virtue. That it meant we were good girls who didn't take up too much space, good girls who didn't ask for more, good girls who could override their needs without complaint and be compliant. A good girl's body is quiet, contained, predictable, easily managed, and being disconnected from your body wasn't framed as a loss. It was framed as maturity, as strength, as self-control. So when women struggle to hear hunger cues now, this isn't a personal failing. It's the outcome of being rewarded over and over again for not listening to yourself. And then someone says to me, I shouldn't need to track food. In theory, sure. But theory doesn't feed people inside the reality that we're actually living in. And here's the part I want to be really clear about. Tracking isn't the goal. Control isn't the goal. Disconnection isn't the goal. Sometimes tracking is the bridge. It is a temporary tool, a way to gather data when internal signals aren't reliable, a way to create consistency and adequacy when life is chaotic, a way to externalize the cognitive load when your brain is already overloaded. It is not forever, and it is not to be done with obsession. It is never as a punishment. It is thoughtful. It is compassionate. It is with context, because true freedom with food isn't pretending that the environment is neutral or putting huge amounts of pressure on ourselves to understand the implications of everything we're putting in our mouths. It is knowing when you need structure and when you don't. It's giving yourself permission for both. And this brings me to something that I'm running in the next few weeks. This is not a challenge. It is not a program you have to keep up with. It's not something you're being asked to perform inside of. It is just about witnessing, because I want to take you with me in real time through an intentional fat loss phase that I'm doing for myself deliberately with support using evidence-based practices, not to glorify weight loss, not to rush it, and not to pretend that it's incredibly simple or easy, but across time, I'm speaking to 5 core principles. First, self-worth, identity, and permission. Fat loss does not require self-hatred or moral failure. Second, self-awareness and emotional regulation. Sustainable fat loss is determined less by discipline and more by your capacity to notice your emotional volatility and regulate your nervous system. Third, what a deficit actually is. A calorie deficit is a physiological state of intentional undereating that reduces the available energy, but it can also impact your emotional bandwidth. Fourth is looking at evidence-based fat loss. So we strip out the drama, we strip out the diet culture bullshit, and we can look at the fact that fat loss is governed by nutrition and looking at your energy balance with training to support you, but how excessive exercise can undermine your progress by adding unnecessary stress. And 5, we're looking at data, detachment, and perspective. Staying sane in a deficit requires emotional detachment from the daily scale fluctuations, using trends over time rather than singular daily numbers to guide decisions. And this is how we protect our sense of self-worth, our self-esteem, and our mindset. All of this is going to be shared inside of a Telegram channel. Again, there's no pressure to comment, no expectation to ask questions, no requirement to weigh in. You can be completely silent and you can just sit there and observe and learn to see what it actually looks like to navigate fat loss without panic, punishment, or performance. And if you're listening to this episode as it drops on Tuesday, it's not too late to join. Deficit Diaries Deficit Diary started yesterday and it is completely free. I'll link the Telegram channel in the show notes. And again, this is a clear window into a process that's either usually hidden or completely distorted. And I want to bring you along, allow you to be a fly on the wall, and truly understand what it looks like to track, to lose body fat, and do so in a way that is psychologically safe, protecting your mindset and protecting your sense of self. Now, if this episode has shaken you up, if it has exposed elements of this process that you haven't thought about before, if you want to share it with someone who you think needs to hear or understand that you cannot always rely on intuition in order to make the best decisions, maybe you want to share this to your Instagram stories, tag me at Bec Cameron Coach, and let's continue the conversation online. Remember, in the meantime, until we speak again, nothing is certain, anything is possible. You've got this, and I've got you.